The wind howled through the shattered metal streets of Outpost Xylos. Lights flickered, buildings smoked, and sirens wailed in alien tongues. It wasn't supposed to happen this way. The humans came to negotiate. They came with peace in their hands. But peace was a word the Arundari Empire had already forgotten. Captain Marcus Vale stood near the edge of the scorched landing platform, watching dropships rain down like angry hornets. He clenched his fists as Arundari plasma blasts tore through the skies. The humans hadn't even raised their weapons yet, but the aliens fired anyway. This wasn't diplomacy. This was an ambush. General Sarek of the Arundari watched from his cruiser above, cold and expressionless. To him, humans were a test. If they survived this, they were worth talking to. If not, they were just another failed species. Sarek gave the order. No survivors. Vale dove behind cover as the first squad was vaporized. The air smelled like burnt metal and blood. He pulled 2 wounded engineers behind a broken hull. They were screaming. He silenced them gently, not with cruelty, but with focus. If they panicked, they died. Communication was already jammed. Command was gone. His unit Echo 9 was scattered. Still, Marcus moved, not because he had orders, but because if he didn't move, someone else would die. And he wasn't going to let that happen without a fight. In a nearby alley, an Arundari assassin crept silently through smoke and debris. Her eyes glowed gold. Her skin was crimson red. Her blade shimmered with green venom. She had studied the humans for months. Their hearts beat faster when afraid. She loved that sound. Her mission was simple: kill the human officer leading the last resistance. Kill him in front of the others. Break their will. But she didn't expect the target to be smiling when she found him. Marcus stepped out from behind a destroyed loader, blood on his face and shirt torn. The assassin hesitated. Her instinct screamed to strike, yet something about him unnerved her. He didn't flinch. He didn't show fear. He just looked at her as if she were already defeated. She lunged, blade flashing. He turned just enough, letting the dagger slice across his ribs. Green venom dripped into the wound. She smiled, waiting for him to collapse. It was always the same. One cut was enough, but Marcus didn't fall. He didn't even blink. Instead, he stepped closer, bleeding but unshaken. He looked into her golden eyes and whispered, "That venom should have killed me in seconds." The assassin blinked. For the first time she stepped back. The humans weren't supposed to survive the venom. That toxin melted organs. It turned lungs to liquid. No creature had ever stood after a single drop. But this one smiled, even as his blood steamed with green light. He was still standing. Still alive. The assassin stared at her blade, then at him. Was the venom old? Had she missed a vital point? No, her strike was perfect. Yet the human now stood inches from her, bloodied but proud. And then he said something that changed everything. "You're not the first to try," Marcus said, his voice calm, almost amused, "and you won't be the last." She wasn't sure if it was madness or courage. She wasn't sure which one scared her more. She backed away slowly, her heart pounding for the first time in years. This wasn't a mission anymore. It was a mistake. A warning shot had just missed. And she wasn't sure she wanted to fire again. The Arundari assassin moved through the ruins like a shadow. Her name was Kirill, daughter of the Third Claw, trained in poison and silence since she could walk. She had killed dozens of species. None ever spoke after her blade touched them. None ever smiled. Now her hand trembled. Not from weakness, but from something far worse: uncertainty. The human named. Marcus Vale had taken her venom, not just a cut. A deep slice where the poison would soak quickly into blood. And yet he stood, his eyes burning like stars. She needed answers. This was no ordinary man. Her orders were clear: kill the resistance leader, crush morale, and vanish. But something about this one made her pause. If one human could resist their deadliest poison, what else could they survive? Carol ducked into a side corridor of the ruined complex. Her breathing was slow, measured. Her mind, however, raced like a war beast unleashed. She wiped the green-stained blade with a cloth, her reflection in the metal showing doubt for the first time in years. Back on the surface, Marcus patched the wound with a strip of synth fabric. The burn was real, the sting was real. But the venom didn't kill him. Not because he was immune, but because he had spent years preparing for it. The Arindari had tested it on prisoners. He had tasted it willingly. The Resistance's med scientist, Dr. Cowrie, had once warned him. "You'll destroy your nervous system." But Marcus only smiled. Better mine than someone else's. The pain was unbearable the first time. But over the years, his body adapted. Now it burned, but didn't kill. Carol wasn't just any assassin. She was a legend among the Arindari. Her file, when captured, was studied by human tacticians for years. None of them expected she would come herself. They thought legends stayed in shadows. But Marcus always believed otherwise. He walked calmly now through the debris-filled corridors. Smoke clung to the air. Somewhere a beam collapsed in the distance. He heard coughs, others still alive. He moved quickly, lifting rubble, helping a trapped soldier crawl free. The man stared at Marcus's wound and whispered, "How are you? Still walking?" Marcus simply nodded. Word spread among the humans. The captain had taken a direct strike from the enemy's deadliest assassin and lived. To the scared and broken, it sounded like a myth. But in war, myths were powerful. Sometimes stronger than bullets. Marcus didn't care for fame, but he saw what it did to his people's eyes. Carol returned to her temporary command base, hidden inside a shattered dome of reflective crystal. General Sarek appeared on the screen, his expression blank. "Is it done?" he asked. Carol looked away before answering. "No, there is a problem." Sarek's brow tightened. "You failed," he said coldly. "We do not fail." Carol didn't argue. Instead, she whispered, "The venom didn't work." He smiled. Sarek leaned forward. "Impossible," but even his voice cracked slightly. "The humans weren't supposed to be this strong. Not this fast." Carol ended the call and stared into her blade again. The toxin was fresh. Her strike was perfect. The human should have collapsed, but he didn't, and now she had doubts. Something she was never trained to handle. She needed to see him again. In the wreckage of a shattered marketplace, Marcus found a wounded child under a collapsed stall. Alien, not human. Big eyes, small body, covered in ash. He lifted the child carefully, speaking softly. The child clung to him. Not all Arindari civilians supported the war. Some were just caught in it. He brought the child to a safe zone being cleared by human engineers. The others stared. "That's Arindari," someone said. Marcus didn't flinch. "And she's just a kid." He gave her water and wrapped her in cloth. It wasn't about species. It was about survival. From a rooftop above, Carol watched. Her eyes narrowed. This was not the brutal killer she expected. This man, this enemy, had compassion. Even for her kind, it made no sense. Why spare the child of your enemy? She gripped the edge of the building until her knuckles turned black. A war was coming, a full invasion. She knew it. Yet now something in her broke. Not her training, not her pride, but her certainty. Marcus looked up briefly. He sensed something watching. He couldn't see her, but he knew. She was near, and she was beginning to hesitate. The child fell asleep in Marcus's arms, wrapped in a heat blanket salvaged from a broken med pod. The resistance camp wasn't much as some stacked crates, a flickering field tent, and a few exhausted soldiers watching the skies. But it was a place where breath still mattered. Marcus laid the child gently beside a heater and stood, hands red with dirt and blood. A young soldier approached him. "Sir, that thing you did taking a hit from her venom, how did you not die?" Marcus didn't answer directly. "I did die. Just not all the way." The soldier didn't know what to say. The night air buzzed with tension. Distant explosions lit the sky orange. The humans had regrouped, but they were outnumbered, outgunned, and surrounded by enemies who didn't understand surrender. Yet something had shifted. The humans believed in something again. They believed in Marcus. Kirill moved along the ruins, eyes alert, blade ready. She should have reported back again. But she didn't. Instead, she hunted alone now, not for the kill, but for understanding. That man Marcus Vale was not what she expected. Not a brute, not a coward, not even angry. Just calm. And dangerous. She found a high point inside a shattered statue dome. From there, she could watch the resistance camp. She saw Marcus giving instructions. Wounded were being tended. Defenses reinforced. And in the middle of it all, he stood like a pillar that refused to break. Her fingers gripped her dagger. The same blade that had ended dozens. She could end this now. A perfect throw, straight to the heart. Yet her hand refused to move. The tip of the weapon trembled. She cursed herself. Silently. What was this hesitation? In her training, she was told humans would run, plead, or rage. But Marcus had done none of those things. He bled, but he smiled. He was struck, but he stood. Her beliefs were cracking. And nothing terrified her more than questions she couldn't answer. Back in the camp, Marcus finished checking the perimeter. He sat down beside a pile of fusion cells and removed his blood-soaked armor piece by piece. The venom still throbbed in his side, but he had learned long ago how to breathe through the burn. Dr. Cowrie finally arrived with a small case of nanomet injectors. "You're insane," she said plainly. "Taking a second hit would kill you," Marcus nodded. "Let's make sure they don't get a second shot." He let her patch the wound in silence. A few soldiers came by and offered him water. He took it, nodding in thanks. His face showed weariness, but his eyes still burned with purpose. They had seen too many commanders fall. Marcus gave them a reason to keep standing. In the shadows above, Kirill shifted her weight. Her blade reflected the dim starlight. She watched every gesture, every movement. None of it was for show. He wasn't pretending to be brave. He simply was. That kind of strength couldn't be faked. A memory stirred within her. A younger Kirill, watching her own mentor die to protect a nest of alien children. She was told compassion was weakness, that it led to mistakes. But now she wasn't so sure. Marcus had shown mercy to one of her kind. Why would someone with power choose not to use it? She saw him glance up toward her direction again. It was brief, like he sensed her without proof. His eyes moved away, but she knew he had felt it. That awareness, that readiness. He wasn't afraid of her anymore. Maybe he never was. A soldier entered the tent and whispered something to Marcus. He stood quickly, body straightening despite the wound. There was a sighting. Irindari scouts had been spotted near the ridge. A possible push toward their last energy reserves. Without those, the camp wouldn't last. Marcus gathered a small team and prepped for movement. Quiet weapons, low noise. It wasn't a strike force. It was a message. We're not done yet. They moved like ghosts through the shattered landscape. Dust rose with each silent step. Kirill followed from the rooftops, unseen. Not to sabotage, not to assist, just to witness. Something in her needed to understand this human fully. How far would he go? How much pain would he endure? What kind of soul could walk through fire and keep smiling? They reached the ridge. The enemy patrol was larger than expected. But Marcus didn't hesitate. He signaled for his team to flank and moved in first. As always, he led from the front. Kirill's breath caught in her throat. This was no longer a war of tactics or numbers. This was something else. Something the Arundari weren't ready for. An idea wrapped in flesh and blood. A man who refused to die where others would fall. And that kind of defiance was hard to kill, even harder to forget. Asterisk. Blades clashed with metal as the Arindari scouts met the human strike team on the ridge. Marcus moved like lightning through the smoke, dodging a spear thrust and striking back with the butt of his rifle. The weapon was low on charge, but it didn't matter. His hands were still enough. The enemy didn't expect humans to fight with such fury. Their files said Earthlings were disorganized, undisciplined, weak, but every step Marcus took rewrote those records. Every swing of his arm reminded the scouts that pain came in many forms, and humans had mastered them all. Kirill watched from above the rocky edge. She had seen ambushes before. She had led many herself. But this was different. The human leader wasn't just fighting. He was protecting. The way he moved between his squad in danger told her everything. 2 of his team were hit, pinned by fire near a downed transport. Marcus didn't hesitate. He slid across broken glass and twisted metal to drag them behind cover. He didn't give orders from the back. He shielded them with his body. Kirill felt her grip tighten on her dagger. She could end this here. 1 throw, right through his back, but her hand didn't lift. She wasn't ready to call him an enemy anymore. Something about him demanded understanding first. As Marcus provided covering fire, one of the wounded soldiers, a woman with a shattered leg, looked up at him. "You're bleeding again, sir." He smirked, just keeping score. Then he stood and fired a blast that forced the scouts to scatter. Behind a charred pillar, an Arindari scout raised his rifle toward Marcus's unprotected flank. Kirill's breath stopped. She made a choice before she even knew she had made it. Her dagger flew, not at Marcus but at the enemy aiming for him. The blade struck the scout's hand. The weapon clattered down. The Arindari hissed in pain and vanished into the shadows. Marcus turned just in time to see the glint of Kirill's blade embedded in the stone. He recognized it. He looked up to where it had come from. But she was already gone. The battle ended with the scouts retreating into the night. 2 more of Marcus's soldiers were injured, but none were dead. The humans had held the ridge, barely, and something strange had happened. One of them had been saved by an enemy's weapon. Back at the camp, Marcus removed the dagger from his vest. The green tint on its edge still glowed faintly. He held it carefully, knowing what it was and who it belonged to. Dr. Cowrie stared at it. "That's hers," she whispered. Marcus nodded. "She had a shot," he said quietly, "but she didn't take it." He placed the blade on the table and stared at it for a long time. Either she missed on purpose, or she changed her mind. Neither answer made the war easier to understand. Elsewhere, Kirill returned to the rooftop dome. Her heartbeat was not calm. Her fingers twitched. Her training told her she had failed. Her instincts told her she had crossed a line. But somewhere deep inside, her soul whispered that she had done the right thing. She no longer believed the war was simple: kill or be killed. Her encounter with Marcus had torn that belief apart. She had seen his strength, yes. But more than that, she had seen his mercy. And that was something rare among warriors. She replayed the moment again, and again in her mind. The way he shielded the others. The way he never hesitated to lead from the front. The way he stood even after being poisoned. Her kind would call him reckless. But she saw something else. She saw honor. She watched the camp from afar. No longer a predator, now a witness. A ghost between 2 sides. She didn't know where her loyalty stood anymore. But her blade had made its decision before her mind did. That meant something. Marcus stood outside the tent, holding the dagger in his hand. He looked at the sky. The stars were hidden behind smoke. The war was far from over, but something had changed. Somewhere out there, his enemy had spared him, and he intended to find out why. The blade sat on Marcus's table like a symbol no one dared touch. It wasn't just a weapon. It was proof that something impossible had happened. The most feared assassin of the Arundari had spared him not once, but twice. That kind of mercy had weight. Dr. Carey approached the table and examined the dagger closely. There's no degradation, she noted. It's freshly coated. She meant to kill, but then she didn't. Marcus said nothing. He already knew what the doctor had confirmed. The assassin had hesitated with intention, news of the spared. Strike began to ripple through the camp. Soldiers whispered that the assassin had chosen not to finish him. Some wondered if she had fallen for the captain. Others said she had simply grown soft. Marcus ignored the talk. He had no interest in stories. He wanted understanding. Elsewhere, Kirill stood in the ruins of a temple once sacred to the Arundari. Broken statues surrounded her, their faces eroded by time and war. She stared at a cracked figure of an ancient warrior. One hand raised, one hand open, strength and mercy. She understood now what that meant. Her communicator buzzed. General Sarek's voice crackled through. We will strike the camp at dawn. No prisoners. She didn't respond. He continued. Your hesitation will not be questioned again. If you fail to act, another will finish what you could not. The signal ended before she could answer. She placed her blade on the stone and stared at it. The weapon had followed her through 100 deaths. It had ended lives with silence, but now it seemed heavier. It remembered the human's eyes, his calm face, his shield raised over others. The blade did not want to strike him again. Marcus walked the perimeter of the camp, checking every barrier and station. The engineers had set up plasma fences and motion turrets, but they all knew it wouldn't stop a full strike. Still, Marcus checked everything. Not because he expected safety, but because he respected every second he could give his people. He paused near the storage crates, where the alien child still slept. One of the soldiers had carved a small toy out of metal scraps. The child held it tightly. She didn't know the meaning of sides or enemies. She only knew the man who carried her from fire. Kirill watched from a distance, her cloaking field shimmering in the night wind. She had seen many leaders. None stayed in the trenches with their soldiers. None carried wounded children. This human defied her expectations at every turn, and it made her question everything she believed. She moved closer, step by silent step. Marcus's back was to her. He was unarmed, vulnerable. Her hand hovered near her belt where another blade waited. But her fingers didn't close around it. She didn't want to kill him. She wanted to speak. He turned slowly, as if he had sensed her long before she revealed herself. He didn't reach for a weapon. He didn't shout. He simply looked at her with tired eyes and a single question in his gaze. Why did you save me? His voice was quiet, but it carried through the silence. Kirill remained still. She had never spoken to an enemy during a mission. It was forbidden. But the words came before she could stop them. Because you were not the monster they described. Marcus tilted his head slightly. And what do you think I am? She answered without pause. Human, nothing more, nothing less. Her voice held no threat. They stood in silence for a moment, not as enemies, not yet as allies. Just as beings caught in a war neither of them had started. Marcus finally asked, will you strike with the next wave? Kirill looked away. I don't know, she said. But I won't strike you from behind. That was all she could promise. Marcus nodded. That was more than he expected. She vanished into the shadows again, leaving no sound behind. But the air felt different. For the first time in this war, a thread of change had been pulled. One that neither side had predicted. And it all began with a single moment of hesitation. Asterisk rain fell over the outpost like a warning from the sky. Drops pattered against the metal sheets and puddled in cracked stone. The humans were silent, listening to the storm as if it carried secrets. Morning was coming, and with it, death. Inside the command tent, Marcus studied a flickering map. Red. Signals swarmed like angry wasps around their position. The attack would hit them within an hour. There was no chance of evacuation, no chance to retreat. This was the hill they would hold. Dr. Cowrie leaned over the table, her eyes scanning the numbers. "We can't hold them," she said, "not with this many wounded." Marcus didn't argue, he knew the odds. But sometimes, battles weren't about winning. Sometimes, they were about making the enemy remember. Carol moved through the shadows beyond the camp. Her cloak flickered as she passed the sensor lines undetected. She could hear the low voices of humans making final checks, their boots splashing through mud. None of them knew what was coming. But she did. She had seen the full strike order. 5 detachments, air bombardment, flame squads, no mercy. General Sarek wanted every trace of the human presence erased. But Kirill had made a choice. She was going to warn them. Even if it meant turning her blade against her own. Marcus stepped out into the storm, letting the rain hit his face. His wounds still ached beneath the armor. The venom had done its damage, but he had forced his body to move anyway. Pain meant little now. He needed every moment he had. He walked toward the south fence, where 2 scouts stood watch. As he approached, one of them turned sharply, weapon raised. "Movement," she said. 10 meters past the line, Marcus raised a hand. "Hold position." He stepped forward alone. Kirill uncloaked in front of him, slowly, her hands open and weaponless. Her eyes were alert, her body tense, but she didn't look afraid. She looked determined. "You need to leave this place," she said quietly. "Now." Marcus didn't move. "We're not running." Kirill shook her head. "Then you will. Burn with the ground beneath you." Her voice was sharp and urgent. Marcus studied her face. She was serious, not tricking him, not testing him. Warning him. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. "Because I've killed many who deserved it," she answered. "But not you, not them." She pointed toward the camp. He could have arrested her. He could have raised an alarm. But instead, he asked one question. "Will you help us hold the line?" She hesitated for only a second. "No," she said. "But I won't let you die without a chance." Then she handed him a small data spike. "This contains their exact deployment routes and timing," she said. "Use it wisely." Marcus took it. Their eyes locked for a long moment, filled with something more powerful than weapons. Not trust, but understanding. She vanished once more into the storm, and Marcus turned back toward the tent. Inside, Dr. Cowrie plugged in the spike and gasped. "This is real," she said. "We know their every step now." "We can build a counterstrike," Marcus nodded. "Then let's begin," he said. Hours passed in silence and preparation. The humans moved quickly, placing traps where the enemy would pass, redirecting defenses, rerouting power to fallback positions. Every motion was made with precision. Every soldier now had a chance. When the first wave hit, they were ready. The plasma bombs struck empty corridors. The fire squads met. Traps that shredded their ranks. Arindari drones were hacked mid-air, crashing into their own lines. The battlefield turned into chaos for the invaders. Marcus led from the front, rifle glowing with energy, shouting commands through the roar. He moved like he had no wound at all. The humans behind him fought harder than ever before. They weren't just defending themselves. They were proving that they mattered. From the cliffs above, Kirill watched the battle unfold. She saw the humans holding ground that should have crumbled. She saw Marcus strike with fury and control. And for the first time, she felt something she never expected. Pride. This wasn't just survival. It was defiance. The ridge burned red with plasma fire. Smoke choked the sky and the earth shook from repeated impacts. But the humans held their ground. With every blast and strike, the resistance answered harder. Marcus stood at the center, moving like the fire couldn't touch him. He led through the chaos with his voice and his blade. Rifles overheated and were tossed aside. Sidearms ran dry. Still, they pressed forward. The enemy was stunned. The humans weren't fighting like prey. They were fighting like wolves cornered in their last den. A drone swarm approached from the north corridor. Marcus pointed, and 2 technicians unleashed an EMP net. Sparks exploded in the air as machines tumbled into the ground. The battle raged, but the tides were shifting. The humans were no longer surviving. They were winning. General Sarek watched. From a distance, his expression frozen. The screen showed failure. Detachments lost. Weapons jammed. Units routed. "What is this?" he hissed. They were not supposed to resist like this. One of his aides tried to speak but was silenced with a glare. Sarek's voice echoed through the assault comms. "Send the final wave. Burn everything. No survivors." His tone was sharp and merciless. The last drop of patience had vanished. This was no longer strategy. This was spite. Kirill heard the order through her private channel. Her blood ran cold. She had seen Sarek lose before, and she knew what he did when that happened. Final waves meant one thing: wipe everything, including their own wounded. The general would rather destroy than admit failure. She turned away from her high perch and sprinted toward the battlefield. Her legs ached, her lungs burned, but she pushed forward. She had done enough watching, enough doubting. Now she would act. Marcus saw the horizon flash with a strange glow. A sound like thunder rolled over the ridge. "That's not artillery," he said. Dr. Cowrey's voice came through the comms. "Something's charging above us. Aerial payloads. There. Going to flatten the whole sector." Marcus didn't flinch. "How long?" Cowrey's voice cracked. 3 minutes, she answered. He looked across the battlefield. His people were still fighting, still pushing back enemy squads. They didn't know that death was falling from the sky. He took a breath and stepped onto a raised platform made of debris. His voice rang out over the field. "All units, fall back to the caves. Now." Some stared in confusion. "That's an order. Go." He turned to the closest group. "Help the wounded. Leave the gear. Move." The urgency in his voice cut through fear. They obeyed without question. Kirill reached the edge of the field just as the humans began to retreat. She ran alongside them, unseen, using her cloak sparingly. A soldier stumbled beside her. She lifted him without revealing her face and pushed him toward the retreat path. The soldier didn't see who helped him. Inside the mountain tunnel, the humans regrouped. The medic set to work immediately. Children were moved to the back. The wounded lay still under flickering lights. And Marcus stood near the entrance, watching the storm approach. He didn't hide. He didn't run. He stood so that every soldier passing would see him there, unshaken. A pillar at the edge of collapse. A reminder that they were not defeated. Kirill stepped from the shadows, her cloak deactivated. She walked up beside him without speaking. For a long moment, they watched the burning sky together. Then she finally said, "You need to come deeper inside." Marcus looked at her, rain soaking his hair. "Not yet." She didn't argue. She just stood beside him. The sky split open. Light poured down like fury. Explosions painted the world white. The ground shook as the ridge collapsed. Everything above turned to dust and ash, but the tunnel held. And so did the people within. As the silence returned, Marcus stepped back into the cavern. His face was smudged with ash, but his eyes were still sharp. Kirill followed him without a word. Around them, soldiers stared at her. She was the enemy. She was the assassin. But she had arrived with the captain. He nodded once, and the others lowered their weapons. Not because they trusted her, but because he did. In the deepest part of the cave, the alien child woke and looked up at Kirill. The assassin knelt, unsure what to do. The child reached out and took her hand, and in that moment, A new kind of war began. The cave walls were quiet now, but the silence was not peace. It was the breath held between what had ended and what had not yet begun. The battle above had faded into dust and fire. The sky had gone dark. But inside the mountain, something new stirred. Marcus sat on a stone slab, his armor peeled off in layers beside him. Blood seeped slowly from the venom wound, but his breathing was steady. Dr. Cowrie crouched beside him, applying fresh gel. "You should rest," she said. He shook his head. "Later," he replied. Around him, the wounded were being treated. The children slept under blankets. Some of the engineers had managed to activate a small power cell. A faint blue light hummed in the corner. It wasn't much, but it was enough to show they were still alive. Kirill stood apart from the others. Her blade was still sheathed. Her shoulders were tense. She had never been this close to so many humans without a mission. Without a target. And yet no one attacked her. No one cursed. No one demanded her life. She was no longer a ghost in the dark. She was a question standing in the open. A soldier approached her, slowly. His hands were empty. His voice was even. "You helped us," he said. "I saw you pull Jenkins from the fire." Kirill didn't answer. She didn't need to. The soldier nodded once and walked away. That was the first step. Marcus called her over. She walked with measured steps, her eyes scanning every corner. She was still ready to fight, still trained for betrayal. But when she stood before him, he offered no weapon. Just a seat on a nearby crate. She sat down without speaking. The two of them watched the camp together. The silence between them was full, not empty. Marcus finally spoke. "They'll come again," he said. Kirill nodded. "Yes, but not for a while. Sarek will need time to recover." Marcus asked, "Will he send you again?" Her voice was quiet. "No, I'm not his weapon anymore." That was her confession. Her line drawn, not loudly, not for attention, but real and final. Cowrie entered the space and froze for a moment, seeing them together. She didn't speak. She just handed Marcus a new data slate. "Communications are back online," she said. "A Terran fleet picked up our emergency burst. They're on the edge of the system." Marcus took the slate and smiled. Hope had a pulse again. Kirill stood and moved toward the edge of the chamber. The child she had helped earlier ran toward her and hugged her leg. Kirill looked down, unsure how to respond. Then slowly, awkwardly, she placed a hand on the child's back. She was no longer the figure in the shadows. She was seen now. Known later that night, Marcus stood before his people. The resistance had no podiums, no ranks that mattered. Only voices and choices. "We held," he said, "because we believed in more than surviving. We believed in each other." Every soldier listened, every child leaned closer. "And we are not alone anymore. Help is coming. And we will meet it standing, not begging." He stepped aside and motioned for Kirill to join him. The room went still. Her boots echoed on the weighted stone. She stood beside him with her head high. She had nothing to prove, only something to offer. "This is Kirill," Marcus said. "She was once sent to kill me. She had the chance. She didn't take it. She warned us. She saved us. And now she stands with us, not because we asked, but because she chose to." The crowd did not cheer. They did not shout. They simply bowed their heads, one by one, in respect, in acknowledgement. That was louder than noise. Kirill's eyes stung. Though no tears fell, she had been feared, hated, used, but never accepted. Until now. Outside, the first rays of morning light slipped past the clouds. The mountain's edge shimmered with gold. A new day had arrived. And for the first time in many lifetimes, Kirill stepped into it, not as a weapon, but as a person, and beside her, the human who should have died from her venom walked forward without fear. Together, They began something no one expected.